The big question, though, on this defensive line, and it's been the question since this guy came into the league, and it seems like the Browns had answered it, but unfortunately, Olivier Vernon ruptured his Achilles at the end of the season. He's on the wrong side of 30. We don't know. We'll talk about Vernon a little bit, but how are the Browns going to help Myles Garrett? Is there somebody on the roster that can do it, or do they need to look outside?
I think that's a premium position. I think that's a very, very key position for them to look at in the offseason. And I think they will. I mean, it's obvious. They tried to do it last year. I mean, they were looking at Jadeveon Clowney. They looked at Ngakwe. They wanted to upgrade that spot, and it just didn't work out the way that they wanted it to. So knowing that, I mean, that they're going to do that. It's just a matter of when and how they're going to do it. So I don't know if they'll try to find somebody with that 26th pick or if they'll trade up. But that's going to be a premium acquisition point for them in this offseason. And I just don't think there's any question about it. Whether they find one in free agency, whether they try to trade for one, or whether they draft one, they will find somebody there, in part because, as you mentioned, Olivier Vernon is coming off of a ruptured Achilles. And although Olivier did a tremendous job this year, when Myles Garrett came down with COVID, Olivier came through with them. He had those 3 sacks in the first game that Myles was out. And then he continued to get that pressure and get those sacks throughout the rest of the season while Myles was struggling. I mean, Myles only had 2.5 sacks in the 6 games back in the regular season. And that might have even included a playoff game, but 2.5 sacks in his first 6 games back. And Olivier picked up the ball and had, I think, 8 in his last 9 games, or 9 in his last 8 games. It was one of those 2 things. But now, again, as you mentioned, from an age standpoint and an injury standpoint, his contract is up. And in my mind, it's probably doubtful that they'll re-sign him coming off of a ruptured Achilles. So they're going to be in the market for that. And I think you can really count on that. And that's as it should be.
So Mary Kay mentioned the Jadeveon Clowney situation, and I just want to pause on that for a second and marinate in that idea and I think truth about the front office decisions in football. Sometimes the moves you don't make, and actually oftentimes it is this case, the moves you don't make end up paying the best dividends for you in the long run. And this front office avoiding even like a 2-year Clowney deal, it saved this team a bunch of headache. Us writers would have been writing, Mary Kay, you'd have been writing weekly about Clowney's availability and his injury status. It would have just been a mess. So this front office really hasn't slipped up once yet. And again, a move they don't make is a shiny example of that, which is why I have confidence in how they're going to address pairing Myles Garrett going forward. I don't have the answer yet. We've got time to dive into rookies and free agent contracts and all that going forward. But like Mary Kay said, it's a premium position. Joe Woods has shown his hand in the type of defense he wants to build. He wants to beat you with his front 4, much like they were doing with the 49ers before he came to Cleveland. Have the best athletes up front so you can drop 7 and create chaos without blitzing. To me, I'd be shocked if the Browns don't invest in an edge rusher in the first 2 picks. Again, don't know what the mock drafts look like, don't know what the prospects are looking like yet, but spending that 26th pick, their first round pick like they did at left tackle last year, would make sense now to marry that with a edge rusher this year. So to me, it just feels like a no-brainer that help is on the way, and this regime has proven that they're going to get Myles that type of help. As far as Olivier Vernon goes, it's crushing. It really just sucks, to point blank period. Mary Kay, I know you were all over the comp pick that they were planning to get with Olivier this year, and that probably is out the window now. I mean, maybe he signs with the team, I don't know, but an Achilles this late in the year at his age is a very difficult situation to overcome. And it's just a tough break. But considering it won't be Olivier and the other options on this team, as we're going to get through, it seems like the clear path to improving this position is through the draft. And considering what their rookie class looked like last year, I'm confident they'll do that again.
So they're kind of left with we saw it in the second half. You got Adrian Claiborne on one side, Porter Gustin is over there. And again, Claiborne, a nice veteran addition. He was signed to a 2-year deal, so unless they decide to go in a different direction, he's here next year. Gustin is a young guy that can set the edge, but he's not getting after the quarterback consistently. So yeah, I don't know if that option, that stalwart option is there right now for this team. But that being said, what did you guys think of the performance of those other guys on that end? Especially Claiborne when he was healthy.
I kept thinking that Claiborne was going to have more sack production. He sort of got off to a little bit of a hot start with, he had a sack in the first game. I mean, I think he's a good player. He'll be around next year, and I like him. I think he is productive. I think he's a fit. He plays with a super high motor, super high energy. Don't think he's the starter there. But definitely a good piece and somebody to have in the rotation. Porter Gustin seemed like he got off to a little bit of a decent start, and then he sort of tapered off a little bit as well. Those guys just didn't, they just didn't really kind of come through in a big, huge way later on. So I do think that, they did well enough, but I still think that, I don't think Adrian is next in line to step in there in the starting role. I think they have to get someone. And I think they might have to trade up from 26 if they want one of the best pass rushers. I think it's hard to find that guy at 26, and they need to find that guy.